I found a book. It's actually a book that I caught my eye at a bookstore better part of a year ago, and I picked it up because I've said on this program a number of times I like to use the English language correctly. I don't always do that, but I try and I always say when I tell my niece and nephews and my son and daughter, no likes, no mans, no dudes, no ahs. Okay, let's use the English language correctly. But I found this book entitled "Like Literally Dude, Arguing for the Good in Bad English." So I picked it up. I went through it. I enjoyed the book. I learned a few things. And then I thought we should probably monthly talk to the show's own linguistics expert. So let's do that here and now. I'm glad to go to Nevada. Is that it? No, Nevada. Glad to go to Nevada. Let's welcome Professor of Linguistics at the University of Nevada. Dr. Fridland is here. Valerie, how are you?
How can I be bad after that kind of intro?
That's a nice setup.
Nevada.
Yeah,
Nevada.
I'm glad to go to Nevada. I have to remember that. So I thought that we'd talk with you kind of on a monthly basis. I think last time we talked, I mentioned offhand that my sister, who's a very smart person, an attorney by trade, she can run circles around me IQ-wise, and yet I catch her with these little, what I call Michigan-isms. I don't know if they're colloquial sayings or what are they? I'm not positive, but they seem to be a mistake in my mind. She says, I'm going to go across town to the supermarket. And I point out there's no T in across, but a lot of people, even some here in Chicago, say across. So today I'd like to have you present a dialect quiz to Rachel, our executive producer, and she's an English major from Loyola, right? DePaul. And the host of the show, John Howell. Can you take a few minutes to do that for us?
I think that would be a lot of fun. I can't wait.
Okay, before we start that...
there are no wrong answers.
Well, of course there's wrong answers. That's there's right and wrong in America. It's either math that adds up or it doesn't. So how is the book Like Literally Dude, Arguing for the Good and Bad English doing, Professor?
It's doing pretty well. Yeah, I can't complain. It came out in April, so not quite, about 6 months ago, and it's been doing well. And they, in fact, signed me for a second book, so I think that's probably a statement that they're pretty happy with it. So all good there.
I'm glad you didn't say it's doing good.
That is one of my pet peeves, although good is the new form, so we got to get over that.
No, we don't. Why don't we just adhere to what's right and wrong? I don't quite get it.
Okay, I haven't been here often enough then. I need to come back more often then, and so I can instruct you in the ways of language evolution.
What is I forgot what politician used to say this thing, Moynihan, defining deviancy downward, right? Why don't we uphold our standards as opposed to just giving in to bad English?
That's a really loaded question because, of course, bad English and who's talking is very much tied to our position in society, our age, for one, our gender, our ethnicity, and also just the moment of history that we happen to be speaking, because many things we say today were considered bad English merely a century ago. And actually, some of the ones we're going to talk about in the quiz today are examples of that.
All right, we're ready. Tyler, do you have some game show quiz music by chance? If not, that's okay. We don't need it. That's all right.
I do not right now. I can have it in about 5 seconds.
And John, again, just to emphasize what Valerie said, there really aren't correct or incorrect answers to this. This is more different ways to pronounce things, regional dialects.
Okay.
So
fine.
It's not right or wrong.
Okay, fine. All right, little music and we'll get started. And now with today's dialect quiz, direct from the University of, glad to go to Nevada, is Professor of Linguistics, Valerie Fridland. Professor, take it away. We're ready.
All right. We're going to start up some easy questions. I want to get you warmed up. And just remember, I'm not grading this, just in case you were worried. All right. My first question. What do you call a soft drink?
Oh, when I grew up, we called it pop.
I call it pop as well.
I think here in Chicago, we call it soda.
That actually, in Chicago, I think you find that some people say pop, some people say soda, but the fact that you grew up saying pop does definitely regionally place you in the Great Lakes area, because that is sort of the center of pop, that whole sort of upper Midwestern area.
Chicago's now the center of pot, P-O-T.
I think that's everywhere.
Well,
John.
yeah,
I feel like pot
obviously,
is
sure.
everywhere now.
Sure.
But actually, we'll get on. It's actually pot in Chicago, I think, not pot. But, so pop is a Great Lakes thing, but you also are very close to sort of the lower Midwestern tendency for soda, and also both coasts tend to be soda speakers.
Yeah.
Now, pop actually is the sound that a cap makes when it leaves the bottle. That's how that word came from. And soda comes from the fact that it was related to sodium. It's soda was sort of an early use of that word. And then in the South, though, where I grew up, and where we know better, we call it Coke.
Just
so
Coke for everything?
Coke for everything. So if I'm getting a Sprite, if I'm getting a Dr. Pepper, it's all Coke. And the reason for that is that Coca-Cola was headquartered in Atlanta, and for most Southerners in the early days of soda, a Coke was what you drank. And so you'd always ask for a Coke. And so now I grew up, and I never knew that was weird until I went to college in Michigan, and people looked at me funny when I didn't want a Coke. I actually wanted a Sprite, but I said I wanted a Coke. So now I can see how that might be confusing.
And the Coke back in the day, early days, actually had cocaine in it, or codeine.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. So you didn't care what you called it at that point. It was just all about getting your buzz, I guess.
Okay, next question.
All right, next question. Now we're going to talk about you. Not you specifically, John, but you, the second person pronoun. So when you're talking to a group of people and you want to use the pronoun you, what is the you form you use?
I say you guys.
Okay, you guys. John?
Why not? I don't think. I may say you all, although that sounds a little kicky, countryish to me. I don't know if I'd say, I just want to talk to you. I want to talk to you. All of you. I think I'd say I'd want to talk to all of you.
Okay, all of you. Now, the interesting thing about the second person pronoun you is that it feels weird to us to use it for a group of yous because there's no singular or plural distinction with it. So we use you for one person or you for many people. And most languages, including English back in its heyday, had more than one form of second person pronoun so that you could talk to a single person or several people. And in fact, in Old English, you could talk to a single you. A dual you, the word yit meant you too, or many, many you.
Here in Chicago, I hear guys that say use all.
Use, yes, perfect. Use is a great example of a very regionalized term. So that is very much a Midwestern, a sort of upper Midwestern Chicago, inland north kind of use. So you hear it in Chicago, you hear it in Michigan. And it actually is from Irish immigrants. So use was an Irish term, and that there was heavy Irish migration and settlement in those areas. So use was a way to talk about plurals there. Have you ever heard yins?
I don't think so, no.
Okay, well, yins is actually very Pittsburgh saying, and it is actually from the Scots, yuans, which was from you ones. It became yins. Yeah. And then, of course, in the South, everybody knows what they say in the South. What do they say in the South?
Y'all.
Y'all. And that is actually you all combined into a sort of just an abbreviated form, y'all. And while people think of that as sort of just a Southern innovation, we actually find references to y'all in 17th century British documents. Yeah. So it seems to have come also from Britain. Those are how you get all so many U's.
How many more examples do you have? Do you have two or three more?
I have two or three more.
Okay. Can I impose upon you to hang on so we don't fall too far behind here? If you don't have to run to a class, or do you have just a few more minutes?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, great.
I can hang on.
This is interesting. A dialect quiz. You can play along on the other side of the radio. We'll take a quick break and come back with more. Valerie Fridland is professor of linguistics at the University of Nevada and author of, like, literally, dude, arguing for the good in bad English. And here's the second half of our dialect linguistic quiz for this month. Thank you very much for hanging on, Professor. Go ahead. What's next?
All right. Let's hop to the harder questions now. We're going to talk about your vowels and have you take a little vowel quiz. So I can't say the words because it might influence your pronunciation, so I'm going to spell them. So this is a double test, testing your spelling and how you speak.
Oh, boy.
All right. But they're short ones, so I think they'll be fine. How do you pronounce these two words? Last and BACK.
Okay, let me first go to our native of Louisville, Kentucky, Kim Gordon. How do you pronounce those words?
Last and back.
Let's go to Rachel Woodall.
Last and back.
Me too. Last and back.
Okay, Rachel, I think, is the winner here on the most northern city shifted vowels of all of you. So the way you say those vowels tells us a lot as linguists about where you're from. And in the inland north, which includes the Chicago Great Lakes region, we find that people are actually raising their tongue position in their mouth for how those had been originally pronounced. So they're saying things like last, big, compared to, for example, a Westerner who's backing their tongue, and it would sound more like last, bach. So when I say them like that side by side, you can really hear the difference.
Yeah.
Although when you grow up among people that say talk just like you do, you don't hear that difference. So I would say of all of the three of you, definitely Rachel wins the Northern City Shift Award. All right.
I can really tell the difference when I talk to people either from Boston, where I went to school, Po-Tah-To and Harvard Yard, or friends of mine from Minnesota. You know, I have a sister-in-law who lives in Minnesota. She's been up there for years, and she definitely has that Duluth and, Minneapolis sort of tilt to her pronunciations.
Right, absolutely. And a lot of that has to do with original settlement groups. So, for example, in Boston, they're not affected by the northern city shift in the same way Chicago is, but the vowel, as in words like hot, that ah vowel is actually fronted, just like it is in Chicago, in certain words in Boston. So you'd say something like bada. For bother, you'd say bada.
Mm-hmm.
But father, the word father, which I think for all of you in Chicago would be merged, so you'd say father, bother with the same vowel. For someone from Boston, they actually back that vowel, so it's bada, but father.
Mm-hmm.
So they have a difference in those two. But I think if you said bother, father, they would probably sound the same vowel, right, John?
I had a texter that just texted me regarding our discussion about pop, and he said in Boston, they call it tonic.
Oh, yes. That is actually a very unique pronunciation of Boston. Boston has a lot of linguistic novelties, shall we say. And I think you know that having grown up there, the other thing, or having gone to school there, the other thing Boston has that most of the rest of the United States doesn't have is a very specific way of saying the creamy white soup that's made with clams.
Okay.
You know what that word is? Tell me
Yes.
that one.
All right, so Kim Gordon.
Chowder.
Okay, Rach?
Chowder.
Okay, now.
Somehow I don't think that's your native
Did I
pronunciation.
win?
I would say chowder.
Chowder. Okay. And I'm going to guess that Rachel actually would have said something more like chowder as well,
Right.
because it's typical that people in the Boston area don't have their R's, and people in the Chicago area do have their R's at the end of words. So absolutely, if you're from Boston and you're a native Bostonian or anywhere in eastern New England, most likely you would say chowder.
Yeah. Professor, can you go back to one of the previous questions, because Kim jumped in during the commercials. She said, I'm definitely Southern because she's originally from Kentucky. What words do we pronounce for you previously?
I asked about a soft drink, what you call a soft drink.
Kim, what did you, when you grew up
I grew up calling it a Coke.
Yeah. See, I knew I liked you, Kim.
Yeah.
But,
But do people say wash instead of wash?
My grandma used to say that. And she was born in
like
Illinois.
nails on a chalkboard for me.
Well, that's called intrusive R when people say worsh. And you find that actually through the heartland. And it's, again, related to the R's and whether your dialect had R's. So typically people that use the intrusive R historically had dropped R's in other circumstances, and they misanalyzed where R's would go after vowels, and those are intrusive, meaning they stuck them in there because they had analyzed those words incorrectly years and years and years ago. We're talking a century ago. And then it just stuck in the word wash and Washington for a lot of speakers that have their R's. And that's a dying feature. We don't hear about that anymore.
I try to listen to some, Shakespeare on occasion, and who's the other poet that my father-in-law absolutely loved? And I try to listen to some of that poetry, just to kind of connect with his memory. And it's really tough because my ear is not acclimated to it whatsoever. Next month, could we go through some phrases and try to find out how these phrases began? There's one that I like, and I think it might be, the attribution might be Alan Greenspan at a congressional hearing years ago when he was the Fed chair. And I think it's, I know that you believe you understand what you think I said, but I'm not sure you realize that what you heard is not what I meant.
I haven't heard that one before. That's a very long phrase. That might be hard to find the origin of, but I can do some research.
Well, I'll send it to you, but I'd like to do this again maybe a few weeks down the line because it's very interesting. Do you have those William Safire books about phrases and language and pronunciations?
I don't, but I used to, when I was younger, read his column on language.
Yeah.
So I have not. So I think that's a collection. Those are collections from his column back in the day, and those are all very interesting. And there's so many of these.
I know.
Phrases and words that are so fun.
I was privileged to have an English teacher who was one of the most influential guys I ever had, who would read William Safire's column to the class every time Safire published one, and would urge us all to get the books and use the language correctly. Well, I know that Rachel is now reading Like Literally Dude, Arguing for the Good and Bad English, so she loves the book. I look forward to talking to you again, and I look forward to reading your next book.
That sounds great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Professor. Thanks for being so generous with your time. That's Valerie Fridland, Professor of Linguistics at the University of Nevada and author of Like Literally Dude, Arguing for the Good and Bad English. No dudes, no mans, no likes, no ahs.